thought that we might have lunch together.
The story begins with Harry Tasker, a highly skilled government agent who appears to live an ordinary life with his wife, Helen, and their teenage daughter, Dana. To Helen, Harry is a successful computer salesman who spends long hours traveling for business and often seems distracted by his work. She believes his frequent absences are simply part of his demanding career, never imagining that the quiet man she knows is actually a secret operative working on dangerous international missions. Harry has become extremely good at keeping his professional life separate from his family life, but maintaining that double identity becomes increasingly difficult as his latest assignment begins bringing danger closer to home. While Harry presents himself as a mild mannered businessman, his real work involves tracking international terrorists and preventing attacks before they can happen. He is part of a highly classified government team that operates under strict secrecy, using advanced surveillance, intelligence, and combat skills to complete missions ordinary agents could never handle. Harry's partner, Albert Gibson, knows the truth about his life and frequently works alongside him during assignments. Together, they investigate suspicious individuals and organizations that may threaten the United States. Harry is comfortable facing armed enemies and dangerous situations, but he has a much harder time dealing with the problems inside his own home, especially the growing distance between himself and Helen. Harry's latest investigation focuses on a mysterious international terrorist named Aziz, whose activities have attracted the attention of American intelligence agencies. Aziz is connected to a dangerous extremist network and appears to be searching for materials capable of creating a devastating attack. Harry and his team do not yet know the full details of his plan, but they understand that Aziz is far more dangerous than an ordinary criminal. He operates carefully, avoids unnecessary exposure, and uses legitimate businesses and innocent looking contacts to hide his movements. Harry realizes that stopping him will require patience and careful surveillance because one mistake could allow the terrorist network to disappear before the government understands what it is planning. At the same time, Harry's home life begins showing signs of trouble. Helen feels increasingly ignored because Harry is constantly away and rarely seems interested in spending meaningful time with her. She has started believing that her marriage has become predictable and empty, even though she still cares deeply about him. Harry notices the change but does not understand how serious it has become. His secret career prevents him from explaining why he disappears or why certain assignments must remain confidential. Every excuse he gives sounds ordinary on the surface, but Helen senses that something about his life does not completely make sense. Their marriage is quietly weakening while Harry remains focused on dangers he cannot discuss. Harry's work becomes more complicated when intelligence suggests that Aziz may be attempting to acquire a powerful nuclear warhead. The possibility immediately changes the seriousness of the investigation. A terrorist organization possessing such a weapon could threaten thousands or even millions of lives, making it essential for the government to locate Aziz before the materials can be assembled or transported. Harry and his colleagues begin tracking financial transactions, suspicious shipments, and individuals connected to the terrorist network. The investigation takes them into dangerous territory where every person they encounter could be an enemy operative. Harry understands that this assignment may become one of the most important missions of his career. During one operation, Harry and Albert follow a suspect connected to Aziz and uncover information that brings them closer to the terrorist network. Their surveillance requires them to remain unnoticed while gathering enough evidence to justify direct action. Harry is experienced at moving through crowded environments without attracting attention, but the mission becomes increasingly dangerous when the suspects realize they may be under observation. The situation eventually forces Harry to act quickly, demonstrating the combat abilities that his family has never seen. To the people around him, he may look like an ordinary salesman, but when danger appears, his training immediately takes over and reveals the completely different man hidden beneath his harmless public identity. Meanwhile, Helen's dissatisfaction with her marriage continues growing. She begins thinking about whether Harry still finds her exciting and whether there is anything adventurous left in their relationship. Her concerns become stronger after she meets Simon, a man who claims to have connections with government agencies and presents himself as a secret operative. Simon's stories make him appear mysterious and exciting, giving Helen the impression that he lives a life filled with danger and adventure. She does not know that his claims are exaggerated, but his attention makes her feel noticed in a way she has not felt for a long time. Harry remains unaware of how this situation is developing. Harry eventually becomes suspicious that Helen may be hiding something from him. He notices changes in her behavior and begins wondering whether another man has entered her life. The irony is that Harry himself has spent years hiding an enormous secret from his wife. Yet he becomes jealous when he suspects she may have secrets of her own. His professional instincts begin influencing his personal life as he tries to understand what Helen is doing. However, because he cannot tell her the truth about his own work, he has no easy way to ask direct questions. Their marriage becomes caught between two people who are both keeping important parts of their lives hidden. The terrorist investigation continues, moving forward as Harry and his team discover that Aziz has established connections inside the United States. The network is no longer a distant international threat. Its members are operating within reach of American cities, preparing for an operation that could cause enormous destruction. Harry's superiors warn him that the situation must be handled quietly because a premature move could cause the terrorists to accelerate their plans. Harry understands the pressure immediately. He must gather enough intelligence to locate Aziz while preventing the terrorist from realizing that the government knows what he is planning. The success of the entire operation may depend on remaining patient until the right moment arrives. Harry's double life becomes even more difficult when his professional responsibilities begin interfering with family events. Helen expects him to behave like an ordinary husband, while Harry is constantly receiving urgent information that could require him to leave at any moment. He tries to maintain the appearance of normality, but his stories become increasingly difficult to explain. Dana also notices that her father is often absent and seems distracted, although she does not understand why. Harry cares deeply about his family and believes he is protecting them by keeping his work secret. He does not realize that the secrecy itself is beginning to create the emotional distance he is trying to prevent. As Harry investigates Aziz's organization, he learns that the terrorists are looking for ways to move dangerous materials without attracting attention. Their plan depends on secrecy, false identities, and carefully selected routes. Harry and Albert begin following the trail through multiple contacts, gradually identifying the people responsible for arranging transportation and communication. Every discovery makes the threat more immediate. Harry realizes that Aziz is not preparing a theoretical attack. The organization has resources, planning, and determination, and its members are willing to kill anyone who interferes. The investigation therefore becomes a race against time, with Harry trying to uncover the complete plan before the terrorists can put it into action. At home, Helen's growing interest in Simon gives Harry another problem to deal with. He does not know whether she is actually having an affair, but his suspicions become difficult to ignore. Instead of confronting her openly, Harry begins using the investigative skills normally reserved for terrorists to learn more about his wife's activities. His behavior creates a strange contrast between his professional confidence and personal uncertainty. He can infiltrate enemy operations, identify threats, and survive armed confrontations, yet he cannot understand what his own wife is thinking. The situation becomes increasingly complicated because Helen believes Harry is simply an inattentive husband, while Harry knows that revealing the truth about himself could completely change her understanding of their marriage. The investigation eventually leads Harry closer to Aziz's inner circle, forcing him to take greater risks. He and Albert prepare for another operation designed to identify the terrorist's location and determine exactly what he intends to do with the materials he is seeking. Harry knows that the enemies they are dealing with are prepared for resistance and may have access to sophisticated weapons. Despite the danger, he remains calm because his training has taught him to control fear and focus on the objective. What he cannot control, however, is the growing instability in his personal life. His professional world is becoming more dangerous at the same time that his marriage is becoming more fragile. As the pressure increases, Harry begins to realize that keeping his family completely separate from his secret career may no longer be possible. The terrorist network is moving closer to its objective, while Helen's unhappiness is pushing her toward choices that could further damage their relationship. Harry must continue pretending to be an ordinary businessman even as he prepares to confront an international terrorist threat. The contradiction becomes harder to maintain with every passing day. He knows that if Aziz succeeds, countless innocent people could die. But he also knows that if his secret life is exposed carelessly, the people he loves could become targets themselves. Harry's next mission brings him directly into a dangerous confrontation with members of Aziz's organization. He enters the operation believing that he can gather the information needed to stop the terrorists before they reach their final stage. The situation quickly becomes more violent than expected, forcing Harry to rely on his combat training and experience. His ability to remain calm under pressure allows him to survive, but the encounter also confirms that the terrorist network is moving faster than intelligence officials anticipated. Harry returns from the mission with more questions than answers, realizing that the threat is approaching a point where waiting may no longer be an option. At the same time, Helen continues believing that Simon represents an exciting escape from the routine of her marriage. She does not know that his mysterious stories are largely designed to impress her, but his attention gives her confidence that she can still experience something adventurous. Harry's suspicions continue growing as he watches the situation from a distance. The irony becomes increasingly clear. The man whose entire life depends on deception is becoming frustrated because he believes his wife may be deceiving him. Their relationship is approaching a moment when both will have to confront the truth about what has been happening behind the appearances they have maintained for years. Harry eventually receives information suggesting that Aziz's plan may involve bringing the dangerous materials into the country through an unexpected route. The discovery gives the intelligence team a new direction and forces Harry to prepare for another operation. He knows that the terrorist leader will be protected by armed followers and that any attempt to reach him could turn into a major firefight. Yet Harry also understands that failing to act could give Aziz everything he needs to carry out his plan. As he prepares for the mission, he remains unaware that events in his personal life are moving toward a revelation of their own, one that will challenge the carefully constructed identity he has maintained for years. The distance between Harry's two lives becomes almost impossible to maintain as the terrorist investigation intensifies and his marriage reaches a breaking point. His work demands complete concentration, but Helen wants attention and excitement from a husband she believes no longer understands her. Harry wants to protect his family without revealing the dangers surrounding his profession, but his secrecy is creating exactly the problems he hoped to avoid. Meanwhile, Aziz continues moving pieces into position for his attack. Harry is approaching a moment when the secrets surrounding both his professional and personal lives will collide, forcing him to confront the consequences of hiding the truth from the people closest to him. Harry's investigation takes a more personal turn when he begins following Helen's movements to understand whether she is actually involved with another man. His suspicions lead him toward Simon, the supposed secret agent who has been making himself increasingly important in Helen's life. Harry quickly discovers that Simon's mysterious stories are not as impressive as they appear. Instead of being a dangerous intelligence operative, Simon is mostly an ordinary man using exaggerated claims to attract Helen's attention. Harry is relieved to learn that his wife has not become involved with a genuine criminal, but the discovery also makes him realize how badly Helen has been craving excitement and attention that he has failed to provide. Rather than confronting Helen immediately, Harry decides to use his professional resources to create an unusual opportunity for her. He arranges for Helen to become involved in what she believes is a dangerous secret mission, hoping the experience will restore some excitement to their marriage. His plan is carefully controlled, with Harry secretly watching everything from nearby while his colleagues provide support. Helen believes she has finally stepped into the mysterious world she imagined Simon represented. She is nervous but also excited by the uncertainty surrounding the situation. Harry watches her reaction and begins realizing that his wife may be far more adventurous than he ever understood. The situation becomes increasingly complicated when Helen is placed in circumstances that feel genuinely dangerous. Harry continues monitoring her while trying to make sure that the carefully constructed deception does not become an actual threat. Helen follows instructions without knowing that Harry is behind the operation, believing she is helping an intelligence mission. For the first time in years, she feels that something unpredictable is happening in her life. Harry watches from a distance and sees a side of his wife that he had almost forgotten existed. The experience forces him to recognize that his marriage has suffered partly because he treated Helen as someone who needed protection rather than as an equal partner. Harry's plan succeeds in giving Helen the excitement she wanted, but it also creates new complications. She becomes more emotionally involved in the mysterious operation and believes the person guiding her may genuinely be interested in her. Harry realizes that his attempt to repair the marriage through deception could easily create another misunderstanding. His colleagues find the situation amusing, but Harry remains concerned because his personal experiment is happening while a real terrorist investigation is still underway. He cannot allow his feelings about Helen to distract him from Aziz. The terrorist network is continuing its preparations, and every moment Harry spends dealing with his marriage is another moment that could allow the enemy to move closer to its objective. Meanwhile, Aziz and his followers continue preparing their dangerous operation. They have acquired the materials necessary for their plan and are working to move everything into position without attracting immediate attention from authorities. Their leader remains confident because he believes the American government has not discovered the full scale of the operation. The terrorists use carefully arranged transportation and trusted contacts to keep the materials hidden. Harry's team knows that something major is happening but still lacks enough information to determine the exact target. Harry understands that the closer Aziz gets to completing the plan, the more difficult it will become to stop him without risking large numbers of innocent civilians. Helen's experience with the supposed secret mission changes her attitude toward Harry, even though she does not yet know he was responsible for arranging it. She feels more confident and begins questioning the routine that had made her unhappy. Her relationship with Harry has always contained affection, but she now realizes that excitement and trust are also important. Harry, meanwhile, becomes increasingly uncomfortable with the lies he has built around their marriage. He has spent years convincing himself that secrecy protects his family, yet, his secrecy has allowed Helen to believe he is simply an uninteresting husband. He begins wondering whether the truth might ultimately be less dangerous than continuing to live behind a false identity. Harry and Helen's relationship becomes even more complicated when the boundaries between Harry's secret operation and his personal life begin disappearing. Helen starts noticing details about Harry that previously seemed insignificant, including his unusual confidence during emergencies and his ability to remain calm when other people panic. She does not yet understand the reason for these qualities, but her suspicions are slowly changing. Harry knows that revealing the truth could place her in danger, especially while Aziz's network remains active. However, keeping everything hidden is becoming increasingly difficult. The two are approaching a point where their marriage will have to survive not only emotional problems but also the discovery that Harry's entire professional identity is different from what Helen believed. Harry's colleagues continue monitoring Aziz's organization and eventually identify a connection between the terrorist leader and a group of wealthy contacts operating within the country. The discovery suggests that Aziz has access to resources resources far beyond what investigators originally suspected. Harry prepares to infiltrate the network and gather information from people close to its leadership. The operation requires him to adopt another identity and enter an environment where one mistake could expose him. His experience makes the assignment possible, but the stakes are higher because the terrorists may already suspect that intelligence agencies are watching them. Harry knows that he cannot afford to let personal distractions interfere with the mission. The infiltration places Harry in direct contact with people who can provide information about Aziz's plans. He carefully observes their conversations and movements, searching for clues about the location of the dangerous materials. His ability to remain convincing under pressure allows him to move deeper into the operation without immediately raising suspicion. Eventually, he discovers evidence that the terrorists are preparing to transport the weapons through a route that could bypass normal security controls. The information confirms that the attack is much closer than intelligence officials believed. Harry quietly passes the information to his team, knowing that they now have a limited amount of time to identify the exact target and stop the operation. Aziz becomes increasingly confident as the final preparations approach completion. He believes his organization has successfully hidden its activities and that the authorities are still searching in the wrong places. His followers remain committed because they believe the attack will create widespread fear and demonstrate the power of their cause. The dangerous materials are moved carefully with every stage controlled by trusted members of the organization. Harry's team begins following the movement of the suspects, but Aziz remains difficult to locate. The investigation is now moving toward a final confrontation, and Harry understands that once the terrorists begin transporting the weapons toward their target, there may be almost no opportunity left to stop them. At home, Dana continues noticing that something unusual is happening between her parents. She does not understand the details, but she can see that Harry and Helen are behaving differently from before. Harry wants to spend more time with his family, yet his responsibilities repeatedly pull him away. Helen is becoming more curious about her husband's real life, especially after seeing how naturally he handles situations that should frighten an ordinary businessman. Dana remains focused on her own teenage concerns, but she is also beginning to sense that her father's stories about work do not completely explain his behavior. The family is approaching a revelation that none of them are prepared for. Harry eventually learns that Aziz's organization has obtained access to a nuclear weapon and intends to use it as part of a major terrorist attack. The information immediately changes the urgency of the mission. There is no longer time for extended surveillance or cautious investigation. Harry's superiors authorize a direct operation designed to locate the weapon and eliminate the threat before Aziz can reach his target. Harry prepares to leave, but his concern for Helen and Dana remains in his thoughts. He knows that the terrorists must be stopped, yet he also realizes that his secret career has brought him closer to danger than his family ever understood. The operation begins with Harry and his team moving against one of Aziz's facilities. They expect resistance, and the terrorists do not disappoint them. Armed guards attempt to defend the location while others begin destroying evidence and moving important equipment. Harry fights through the resistance with the same determination he has shown throughout his career. His objective is not simply to capture criminals, but to find information about the nuclear weapon before it disappears. The confrontation becomes chaotic, but Harry and his colleagues manage to secure important evidence and identify the next stage of Aziz's plan. The victory is significant, yet Harry realizes that the terrorists are still ahead in one important way. Aziz manages to keep the nuclear weapon moving while several members of his organization are captured or killed. His ability to escape prevents the operation from ending immediately, and Harry realizes that the terrorist leader has been preparing alternative plans from the beginning. The authorities now know that a major attack is coming, but they still do not know exactly where or when it will happen. Harry's frustration grows because every delay increases the potential number of victims. He begins examining every piece of information again, searching for a connection that might reveal the target. His professional instincts tell him that Aziz's final move will depend upon secrecy and surprise. Helen, meanwhile, begins discovering that the mysterious world she thought she was entering through Simon and Harry's unusual behavior is far more complicated than she imagined. She does not yet know that Harry is a government agent, but several details no longer fit the ordinary life he has described. His unexplained absences, strange phone calls, and sudden changes in behavior are becoming impossible to ignore. Helen starts wondering whether Harry has been lying about his career for much longer than she realized. Her curiosity grows at exactly the wrong time because the terrorist investigation is approaching its most dangerous stage, placing Harry's family closer to the consequences of his secret life. Harry finally understands that Aziz's operation may involve using a location where thousands of people could be exposed to the attack. He shares his concerns with his team, and investigators begin examining possible targets. Every major location must be considered, but the evidence points toward a plan designed to create maximum publicity and fear. Aziz does not simply want to kill people, he wants the attack to become a message seen around the world. Harry knows that stopping the weapon is therefore only part of the mission. They must also prevent Aziz from reaching the location where he intends to make his final statement through violence. As Harry prepares for the next operation, he receives information that changes everything about his personal life. Helen has become involved in a situation that places her unexpectedly close to the terrorists' activities. What began as a misunderstanding connected to her desire for excitement now threatens to become a genuine danger. Harry realizes that his efforts to protect his family through secrecy may have failed completely. Helen is no longer safely separated from his professional world. If Aziz's organization discovers who she is or why Harry cares about her, she could become a valuable target. Harry must now protect his wife while continuing to prevent a terrorist attack. The realization forces Harry to confront a truth he has avoided for years. His family cannot remain completely separate from his work because the dangers surrounding him are too large and too unpredictable. He has always believed that secrecy was the safest form of protection, but now the people he loves are being pulled directly into the consequences of his hidden career. Harry decides that if he wants Helen and Dana to survive, he must stop Aziz before the terrorist network can use them against him. The mission becomes deeply personal without changing its larger purpose. Harry is still fighting to save innocent lives, but now his own family may be among them. The final preparations for the terrorist attack move forward while Harry and his team race to identify Aziz's location. The enemy has the weapon, the resources, and the determination to carry out its plan. Harry has his training, his team, and the knowledge that failure could destroy countless lives. At the same time, Helen is unknowingly moving closer to the center of the crisis. The separate worlds Harry has carefully maintained are finally beginning to collide. He knows that the next confrontation will not only determine whether Aziz succeeds, but also whether Harry can finally bring the truth about his life into the open and protect the family he has spent years trying to shield. Harry's situation becomes more dangerous when he realizes that Helen has been drawn into circumstances connected to his investigation without understanding the true threat surrounding her. The woman who once complained about the dullness of a marriage is now much closer to the world Harry has spent years hiding from her. Harry's first instinct is to protect her by keeping even more information secret. But he quickly understands that secrecy may no longer be enough. Aziz's organization is preparing a major attack, and anyone connected to Harry could potentially become a target. Harry therefore begins balancing two responsibilities that have suddenly become inseparable: protecting his family and stopping the terrorists before their plan reaches its final stage. Helen's growing curiosity about Harry's strange behavior finally leads her to question the explanations he has given her for years. She remembers his frequent business trips, unexplained injuries, sudden disappearances, and unusual ability to remain calm during dangerous situations. Individually, each detail could be explained away, but together they form a pattern she can no longer ignore. Harry notices her questions and realizes that the truth may soon become unavoidable. He still worries that revealing his identity could place her in greater danger, especially while Aziz remains active. But he also recognizes that Helen deserves to understand the life her husband has been living. Their marriage can no longer survive entirely on carefully constructed lies. Meanwhile, Aziz moves the nuclear weapon closer to the location chosen for the attack. His followers work quickly because they know that American intelligence agencies are beginning to understand the scale of the threat. Aziz remains convinced that he can complete the operation before the government is able to organize an effective response. His confidence comes from the belief that Harry and the other agents are still searching for information rather than acting directly against him. The terrorists maintain strict security around the weapon and eliminate anyone they believe could expose their movements. Every step brings them closer to a devastating attack, while Harry's team struggles to determine exactly where the final operation will take place. Harry and his colleagues continue following the available intelligence, eventually discovering that Aziz's organization has established a temporary base connected to the final stage of the operation. The location provides investigators with a crucial opportunity to intercept the terrorists before they reach their target. Harry prepares for the mission immediately, knowing that hesitation could allow Aziz to move the weapon beyond their reach. His team coordinates surveillance and tactical support while Harry studies the building and possible escape routes. He understands that Aziz will likely expect an assault and may have prepared traps or hostages to slow the police down. The operation must therefore be fast enough to surprise the terrorists but controlled enough to prevent unnecessary casualties. The assault begins with Harry and his team approaching the terrorist base under cover of darkness. They move carefully through the surrounding area using surveillance information to avoid the strongest defensive positions. Once the first group of agents enters the facility, the terrorists realize that their security has been compromised and begin firing back. The confrontation quickly becomes violent as Harry moves through the building searching for evidence of the nuclear weapon. He knows that finding Aziz is important, but locating the weapon is even more urgent. If the terrorists managed to move it during the battle, the entire operation could fail despite the police gaining control of the facility. Harry eventually discovers that Aziz has already moved the weapon and left behind only enough information to mislead investigators. The discovery frustrates the team because they have once again arrived moments after the terrorist leader has escaped. However, Harry refuses to treat the operation as a failure. The evidence recovered from the facility reveals that Aziz is planning to use a major public event as part of his attack. The information finally gives intelligence officers a realistic idea of the target. Harry immediately realizes that the terrorists are attempting to create a situation where thousands of people will be present, making the consequences of a successful attack catastrophic. At the same time, Helen finds herself trapped in a situation that is far more dangerous than anything she imagined. What she believed was an opportunity to experience excitement has turned into genuine danger, and she begins realizing that the people around her may not be who they claim to be. Her confidence starts disappearing as she understands that the mysterious world she wanted to enter contains real violence and people willing to kill. She thinks about Harry and the ordinary life they once shared, suddenly wondering whether the man she considered boring might actually have been hiding something much larger. For the first time, Helen begins to understand that Harry's secrecy may have been protecting her from a world she never truly knew. Harry learns that Helen's situation has become connected to the terrorists and immediately changes his priorities. His colleagues remind him that the nuclear threat remains the central objective, but Harry cannot ignore the possibility that Helen may be used against him. Aziz's organization knows how to exploit personal weaknesses, and Harry's family could become the perfect leverage. He therefore insists on locating Helen while continuing to track the terrorists. The mission becomes more complicated because every minute spent searching for her gives Aziz additional time to prepare the attack. Harry knows he cannot choose between his responsibilities. He must find a way to save Helen and stop the weapon at the same time. The search leads Harry toward information suggesting that Aziz has taken control of a location where Helen may also be present. Harry realizes that the terrorists may have discovered her connection to him and are using her as part of their larger strategy. He becomes more determined than ever to reach her before the situation becomes irreversible. His colleagues understand the personal importance of the mission, but also warn him not to allow emotion to compromise his judgment. Harry agrees, knowing that reckless action could make Helen's situation worse. He prepares carefully, using every piece of intelligence available to determine how the terrorists are positioned and where their leader is likely to move next. Harry finally reaches Helen and begins trying to explain the truth about his life. The revelation is overwhelming for her because the husband she believed was a computer salesman is suddenly revealed as a highly trained government agent. She struggles to understand how many years of their marriage were built around information he was never allowed to share. Harry tells her that his secrecy was never intended to make her feel unimportant. He believed keeping his work hidden would keep her and Dana safe. Helen is angry because she feels betrayed, but the danger surrounding them leaves little time for an emotional argument. She must now accept that Harry's world is real and that their survival depends upon working together. Helen's reaction changes when she sees Harry dealing with the terrorists directly. The man she once considered ordinary suddenly demonstrates the confidence and skill of someone who has spent years facing dangerous enemies. She realizes that many of the qualities she misunderstood were actually signs of the life he had been hiding. At the same time, Harry understands that Helen is capable of handling more than he previously believed. Instead of simply hiding her somewhere safe, he begins giving her instructions and trusting her to help. Their relationship starts changing because they are finally interacting with each other honestly, even though the truth has arrived under the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. Aziz's organization begins moving toward the final stage of its operation, forcing Harry and Helen to escape before they can be surrounded. Harry leads them through a dangerous route while coordinating with his team for support. Helen follows his instructions despite her fear, gradually adapting to the reality that survival now depends upon staying calm. She has spent much of her life believing Harry was incapable of excitement, yet now she is seeing the opposite. Harry remains focused because he knows every second matters. The terrorists are already moving the nuclear weapon toward its target, and the window for stopping them is rapidly closing. Their escape must therefore lead directly into another confrontation. The government receives confirmation that Aziz has begun transporting the weapon toward the selected target. Intelligence officers immediately mobilize additional resources, recognizing that the situation has become an emergency. Harry provides everything he knows about the terrorist movements and explains the information recovered during the earlier raid. The team identifies several possible routes but cannot determine exactly where Aziz will strike until the terrorists reveal their final position. Harry refuses to wait passively. He knows Aziz has repeatedly escaped because he changes plans quickly, and the only way to stop him is to stay close enough to react immediately. The operation becomes a race between two groups moving toward the same destination. Helen begins proving that she is more useful than Harry initially expected. She remains frightened, but she listens carefully and responds quickly when Harry gives instructions. Their shared experience begins rebuilding the trust that had been damaged by years of secrecy. Harry realizes that protecting Helen does not necessarily mean keeping her away from every dangerous situation. Sometimes it means trusting her enough to understand what is happening. Helen also begins seeing Harry differently, not simply as a secret agent, but as a husband who genuinely loves his family. The danger surrounding them has forced both of them to stop pretending that their marriage can continue exactly as it was before. Aziz finally reaches the area where he intends to launch the attack, bringing the nuclear weapon dangerously close to its final position. His followers begin establishing security while preparing the device for deployment. He believes the operation has succeeded because the government has not yet stopped him. However, Harry's team is already moving toward the location, using the information gathered during the investigation to narrow the search. Harry knows that a direct confrontation is inevitable. The terrorists are heavily armed and prepared to defend the weapon, while the consequences of failure are too severe to imagine. Harry prepares himself for the most dangerous mission of his career, knowing that this time there will be no room for mistakes. As the final operation approaches, Harry's personal and professional lives become completely intertwined. Helen is no longer simply waiting at home for her husband to return from a business trip. She now understands the danger he has faced throughout their marriage and the reason he could never explain where he was going. Harry, meanwhile, no longer has the luxury of pretending that his work and family can remain separate. The people he loves are now standing beside him as the terrorist threat reaches its most dangerous point. He knows the coming confrontation will determine more than the success of one mission. It will determine whether Harry and Helen can rebuild their marriage after the truth has finally destroyed the lies that separated them. The terrorists begin preparing the nuclear weapon for the final attack, while Harry and his team position themselves nearby. Every officer understands the consequences of failure, but Harry carries an additional responsibility because Helen is now directly involved in the crisis. Aziz remains confident, believing his careful planning has kept him ahead of the authorities. He does not realize that Harry has already survived several attempts to stop him and has learned how the organization operates. The final confrontation is approaching rapidly. Harry checks his equipment, communicates with his team, and prepares to move. This time, he is not simply protecting a mission or a government objective. He is protecting his family and thousands of innocent people at the same time. Harry's team launches the final assault as Aziz's followers begin realizing that their position has been compromised. The terrorists attempt to defend the weapon while others search for escape routes, but the government forces are prepared for the confrontation. Harry moves directly towards the center of the operation, determined to reach Aziz before the terrorists can activate the weapon. Helen remains nearby, following the instructions she has been given and refusing to panic despite the chaos. The situation becomes increasingly dangerous as gunfire spreads through the area and the terrorists realize that their carefully prepared plan is collapsing. Harry pushes forward, knowing that the final seconds may decide everything. Aziz manages to escape the immediate assault with the nuclear weapon still under his control, forcing Harry to continue the pursuit. The terrorist leader believes that the chaos has given him enough time to reach the final location, but Harry refuses to stop. The chase becomes a desperate race involving vehicles, armed enemies, and rapidly changing routes. Helen remains caught in the middle of the crisis, but she has become far more capable than the frightened woman Harry first tried to protect. She understands what is at stake and knows that Harry cannot succeed unless she remains calm. Their partnership is now based on trust rather than the secrecy that once defined their marriage. The pursuit carries Harry closer to the final confrontation with Aziz, while government forces continue closing the surrounding area. The terrorist leader has lost many of his followers and no longer has the control he enjoyed earlier. His plan is beginning to collapse, but the nuclear weapon remains an immediate threat. Harry knows that defeating Aziz personally is not enough. The weapon must also be secured before it can cause destruction. He moves forward with complete focus, while Helen remains involved in the unfolding operation. The truth that once threatened to destroy their marriage has unexpectedly brought them closer, because both now understand exactly what the other has been fighting for throughout their lives. As Harry approaches the final stage of the pursuit, Aziz becomes increasingly desperate. His original plan depended on secrecy, preparation, and the belief that the authorities would always arrive too late. Now, all three advantages are disappearing. Harry has found him, the government knows the location of the weapon, and the terrorist organization is breaking apart around him. Aziz still possesses enough resources to remain dangerous, but he no longer controls the situation completely. Harry understands that desperate enemies can be more unpredictable than confident ones, so he prepares for anything. The final confrontation is only moments away, and Harry knows that stopping Aziz will require everything he has learned throughout the mission. The night that began with Harry secretly investigating a terrorist organization has now transformed into a battle involving his entire family. Helen has discovered the truth about her husband. Harry has been forced to confront the consequences of years of secrecy, and Aziz has brought his plan to the point where failure could result in catastrophic destruction. Yet, the terrorists have underestimated the determination of the people pursuing them. Harry's team continues closing in, while Helen refuses to abandon him despite everything she has learned. Harry prepares for the final encounter, knowing that the outcome will decide whether Aziz succeeds, whether innocent lives are saved, and whether his family can finally begin a new chapter built on truth instead of lies. The final confrontation moves closer as Harry and his team continue pursuing Aziz and the nuclear weapon. The terrorist leader has lost much of the organization that once protected him, but he remains extremely dangerous because he knows that the weapon can still cause enormous destruction. Harry refuses to let the pursuit slow down, understanding that every second matters. Helen remains involved in the operation and now sees the seriousness of the world Harry has hidden from her. Instead of being completely overwhelmed, she begins trusting his instructions and adapting to the danger around her. Their relationship has changed rapidly, but the crisis gives them little time to discuss the consequences of what has been revealed. Aziz attempts to reach the final destination where he intends to use the nuclear weapon, believing that the chaos surrounding the pursuit will prevent the authorities from stopping him. His remaining followers protect the weapon while moving through heavily controlled areas, creating confusion for anyone attempting to follow them. Harry and his colleagues coordinate their efforts to prevent the terrorists from escaping. They know that Aziz is running out of options, which makes him more dangerous because desperation may cause him to take risks he would normally avoid. Harry studies the movement of the vehicles and realizes that the terrorists are heading toward a location where a large number of civilians could become victims. The government begins evacuating people from areas considered potential targets, while additional agents and military personnel move into position. Harry provides everything he knows about Aziz's plan, explaining the terrorists' likely intentions and the importance of securing the weapon before it reaches its final position. The authorities now understand that this is not simply an arrest operation. They are dealing with a weapon capable of causing catastrophic destruction, and there is no guarantee that Aziz will surrender if cornered. Harry's experience tells him that the terrorists will probably attempt one final escape. He prepares his team accordingly, making sure they are ready for sudden changes in direction or unexpected attacks. Helen continues traveling with Harry while trying to understand how completely different his life has been from what she believed. She remembers the ordinary husband who came home from supposed business trips and now compares him with the man directing an operation against terrorists. Her emotions remain complicated because she feels betrayed by his secrecy. Yet she also recognizes that Harry's actions were motivated by a desire to protect people. She begins understanding why he could not simply tell her everything. The danger surrounding his work was real, and revealing his identity could have placed their family at risk. Even so, she knows that rebuilding their relationship will require honesty once the crisis is over. Aziz's remaining men attempt to slow the pursuing forces by creating obstacles along the route. Harry's team responds quickly, preventing the terrorists from gaining enough distance to disappear. Several vehicles are forced to change direction as police and military units close in from different sides. The operation becomes increasingly chaotic, but Harry remains focused on the main objective. He knows that stopping every terrorist is impossible, while the weapon remains unsecured. His priority is therefore to reach Aziz and prevent the nuclear device from being activated. Helen watches Harry make decisions under enormous pressure and begins realizing that the confidence she once wanted from her marriage has been present all along, hidden behind the identity he was forced to maintain. The pursuit eventually reaches a heavily populated area where Aziz hopes the presence of civilians will make the authorities hesitate. Harry immediately understands the danger and orders his team to be extremely careful. The terrorists believe that using civilians as potential shields will give them an advantage, but Harry refuses to allow panic to control the operation. He coordinates with nearby units while searching for a way to isolate Aziz from the public. The situation becomes more complicated because every action carries the risk of causing casualties. Harry knows that the terrorists are counting on this hesitation, so he begins looking for an alternative approach that will allow the police to strike without putting innocent people directly in the line of fire. Aziz realizes that Harry is closing in and becomes increasingly furious. He had expected the operation to end with the destruction of his enemies and the spread of fear, but instead, his organization is collapsing around him. He orders his remaining followers to hold their positions and protect the weapon at any cost. Some members hesitate because they understand that the mission is failing, but Aziz threatens them into continuing. His authority is now based entirely on fear rather than loyalty. Harry sees the signs of desperation and understands that the terrorist leader is approaching a point where he may sacrifice his own followers simply to gain a few additional minutes. Harry's team finds an opening and begins moving toward the terrorist's position. The attack is carefully coordinated because the nuclear weapon is nearby and cannot be damaged during the confrontation. Officers take positions around the area while Harry moves toward the center. Gunfire erupts as Aziz's followers attempt to stop the advance. Harry uses cover and movement to push forward, eliminating threats while communicating with his colleagues. Helen remains protected but close enough to understand what is happening. She watches Harry enter the most dangerous part of the operation and realizes that the man she once thought was incapable of excitement is now risking his life to prevent thousands of strangers from being killed. The fighting becomes more intense as Harry reaches the inner defensive positions. Aziz's remaining guards are heavily armed and determined to prevent anyone from reaching the weapon. Harry's training allows him to move through the confrontation with precision, but the situation remains extremely dangerous. One mistake could allow the terrorists to activate or move the nuclear device. Harry continues advancing while his colleagues secure the surrounding area. The criminals begin losing ground and several surrender when they realize that escape is no longer possible. Aziz refuses to surrender, believing that as long as he remains in control of the weapon, he still has enough power to force the authorities to obey him. Helen becomes unexpectedly important when circumstances force her to act rather than simply wait for Harry's return. She follows the instructions she has received and helps create an opportunity for the government team to reach a more secure position. Her actions demonstrate that she has changed since the beginning of the story. The woman who once wanted excitement without understanding its consequences is now facing genuine danger and responding with courage. Harry notices what she has done and realizes that he can trust her under pressure. Their relationship is beginning to transform because Helen is no longer being kept outside Harry's world. She is now actively helping him survive it. Aziz finally reaches the point where he believes he can complete his plan. He attempts to move the nuclear weapon toward its intended position while Harry and the government forces continue closing in. The terrorist leader is surrounded by fewer and fewer loyal followers, but he remains determined to continue. Harry understands that there may be only one opportunity to stop him. He communicates with his team and prepares to make the final move. The surrounding area is secured as much as possible, while civilians are directed away from the immediate danger. The operation has become a race between Harry's determination to prevent destruction and Aziz's desperation to create it. The final pursuit takes Harry and Aziz into a dangerous aerial confrontation as the terrorist attempts to escape with the weapon. Harry refuses to allow him to disappear, knowing that losing sight of Aziz could mean losing the only opportunity to prevent the attack. Military support arrives as the pursuit intensifies, creating a rapidly changing battlefield above the city. Harry remains focused despite the extreme danger, using every available advantage to stay close to the terrorist. Aziz believes he can still reach his destination, but Harry's persistence continues closing the distance. The battle is no longer about gathering intelligence or preventing a possible attack. It is now a direct struggle to stop the weapon before it can be used. As the confrontation continues, Harry manages to disrupt Aziz's escape plan and force the terrorist into an increasingly difficult position. The weapon remains the central concern, and Harry knows that destroying the wrong vehicle or allowing the device to fall into an uncontrolled area could create another disaster. His decisions must therefore be precise despite the speed and violence of the battle. The support teams continue coordinating from the ground while Harry remains directly involved in the pursuit. Aziz begins realizing that Harry will not stop, regardless of how dangerous the situation becomes. The confidence that once defined him is replaced by desperation as his carefully planned attack begins collapsing. The battle reaches its most dangerous moment when the nuclear weapon is placed in a position where it could cause enormous destruction if Aziz succeeds. Harry understands that there is almost no time left. He takes an enormous risk to prevent the weapon from reaching the intended target, relying on his experience and instinct to make the necessary decision. The action is extremely dangerous, but Harry knows that hesitation could cost countless lives. His team supports him from the ground while Helen watches the confrontation unfold. She now understands the true meaning of the risks Harry has faced throughout their marriage and realizes how close their family came to becoming part of a catastrophe. Harry's determination finally begins turning the situation in his favor. Aziz loses control of the weapon and finds himself unable to complete the attack as planned. His remaining options disappear one after another as government forces secure the surrounding area. The terrorist leader attempts to continue fighting, but his organization has already collapsed and his resources are gone. Harry moves toward him with the knowledge that the most dangerous part of the mission is finally coming to an end. The weapon must still be secured, but the immediate threat is weakening. Aziz's dream of creating widespread terror is disappearing, replaced by the reality that his own plan has trapped him. The remaining terrorists are captured as the authorities take control of the area. The nuclear weapon is secured and specialists begin determining how to safely handle it. Officers check the surrounding locations to make sure no additional devices or hidden explosives remain. The scale of the operation becomes clear as reports confirm that a catastrophic attack has been prevented. Harry finally has a moment to understand what has happened. He has survived the mission, protected Helen, and helped prevent Aziz from killing thousands of people. Yet, the experience has also changed his understanding of his marriage. He can no longer return to pretending that his professional identity does not affect the people he loves. Helen reunites with Harry after the immediate danger has passed. Their conversation is emotional because so much has changed between them in such a short period. Helen admits that she is angry about the years of secrecy, but she also understands why Harry believed he needed to hide his work. Harry acknowledges that protecting his family does not excuse every lie he told. He realizes that treating Helen as someone who could not handle the truth caused her to feel isolated and unimportant. Helen, meanwhile, understands that the ordinary life she wanted was never as simple as she imagined. They begin discussing the possibility of rebuilding their relationship with honesty rather than pretending the past never happened. Harry's colleagues also begin processing the success of the operation. The government team knows that Aziz's plan could have resulted in an enormous tragedy if Harry and the others had failed to stop him. Reports are prepared, evidence is secured, and surviving terrorists are taken into custody. The operation will require extensive investigation because the organization may have additional contacts and resources that have not yet been discovered. Harry understands that stopping Aziz does not automatically erase every threat. However, the immediate crisis is over, and the people who were in danger can finally return to safety. For Harry, that knowledge matters more than any official recognition he may receive. The experience also changes Helen's understanding of what she wants from her marriage. She had believed excitement was missing because Harry seemed ordinary, but now she realizes that the deeper problem was their lack of honesty and communication. She no longer needs Harry to pretend to be someone else simply to make their relationship interesting. Instead, she wants to know the real person behind the professional identity. Harry begins to understand that he cannot protect Helen by deciding everything for her. If they are going to remain together, she must be allowed to understand the risks and make choices for herself. Their relationship begins moving toward a new balance built on trust. Dana also becomes part of the family's changing dynamic as Harry and Helen attempt to return to normal life. She may not understand every detail of what happened, but she recognizes that her parents are behaving differently. Harry is more open with Helen, while Helen appears more confident and less frustrated than before. The family begins spending time together without the emotional distance that had previously separated them. Harry knows that he cannot explain every classified detail of his work, but he can be more honest about the fact that his career involves danger and secrecy. For the first time, he begins finding a way to balance being a government agent with being a husband and father. The terrorist threat has been defeated, but Harry knows his work will continue. Aziz's network has been severely damaged, yet international terrorism remains a larger problem that cannot be eliminated through one operation. Harry prepares to return to his duties, but he does so with a different understanding of what his family needs from him. He no longer sees secrecy as the only way to protect them. Instead, he recognizes that trust and communication are equally important. Helen has proven that she can face danger when necessary, and Harry has learned that allowing her to understand his world does not automatically make her weaker. Their marriage now has an opportunity to become stronger because the lies have finally been exposed. As the immediate crisis ends, Harry looks back at everything that happened and realizes how close he came to losing both his family and the mission. The terrorist operation forced him to confront dangers he could handle with weapons and training, while his marriage forced him to confront problems that required honesty and emotional courage. He understands that defeating Aziz was only one part of the story. The other victory was rediscovering the relationship he had allowed to become distant. Helen is no longer simply the wife waiting for a businessman to return home. She now knows the truth about the man she married, and Harry finally understands that protecting the people he loves also means allowing them to know who he really is. With Aziz's operation finally stopped, Harry and the other agents begin securing everything connected to the terrorist network. The nuclear weapon is placed under government control, surviving members of the organization are arrested, and investigators begin examining the evidence recovered during the final confrontation. The operation has prevented a catastrophe, but Harry knows that the work is not finished until every remaining connection is identified. Intelligence officers begin tracing financial records, communications, transportation routes, and contacts that could reveal other members of Aziz's network. Harry participates in the process while also trying to return his attention to his family. For the first time, he can think about home without wondering whether an enemy is waiting there. Helen's understanding of Harry's life continues changing as she processes everything that happened. The husband she once considered boring and predictable is now revealed to be someone who has spent years confronting armed criminals and international terrorists. She realizes that many of the moments she interpreted as indifference were actually consequences of the dangerous responsibilities he carried. At the same time, Harry understands that her frustration was justified because secrecy had prevented her from knowing what was happening. Neither of them can simply erase the years of misunderstanding, but both now have the opportunity to communicate honestly. Their marriage begins entering a new stage where trust must replace the assumptions that previously separated them. Harry returns to the department and receives attention from colleagues who recognize how close the operation came to disaster. The mission has become one of the most significant successes of his career, but Harry remains uncomfortable with praise. He focuses instead on the details investigators still need to resolve. Some members of Aziz's network remain unidentified, and intelligence officials want to determine whether the organization had other plans prepared. Harry reviews the information gathered during the investigation, comparing it with previous intelligence reports. His experience allows him to recognize patterns that others might overlook. He knows that terrorist networks rarely depend on one person alone, and he wants to make sure Aziz's defeat does not leave behind another hidden threat. The investigation eventually reveals that Aziz had relied on several people who never understood the full scale of his plan. Some believed they were helping with ordinary smuggling operations, while others knew they were involved in something illegal but did not realize a nuclear attack was being prepared. Investigators begin separating the minor participants from the people who knowingly supported the terrorist operation. Harry understands that this distinction matters because the goal is not simply to arrest everyone connected to Aziz. The government needs to identify those who deliberately helped create the threat and determine whether any of them could collect information capable of exposing additional dangers. The investigation therefore continues even after the main enemy has been defeated. Helen begins returning to ordinary activities, but she now sees them differently. Shopping, driving, spending time with Dana, and simply being able to move around without fear all feel more meaningful after the danger she experienced. She remembers how desperate she once was to escape a boring routine, only to discover that genuine danger was very different from the excitement she imagined. Her experience with Simon and the terrorist operation taught her that adventure without trust can become dangerous very quickly. She does not regret becoming more confident, but she now understands that excitement should not require pretending to be someone else. What she wants most is a relationship where both she and Harry can be honest about their lives. Harry also begins changing the way he approaches his family. He cannot reveal classified information, but he makes an effort to stop using his work as an excuse for emotional distance. He explains when his schedule may become unpredictable and reassures Helen that his absences are not a reflection of how he feels about her. Helen appreciates the difference because she no longer has to invent explanations for his behavior. Their conversations become more open, and Harry discovers that communicating about the limits of his work is possible without revealing information that could endanger national security. The balance is difficult, but both recognize that their marriage is stronger when secrecy is limited to what is genuinely necessary. Dana notices the changes between her parents and becomes more interested in spending time with them. Harry realizes that he has missed important moments in his daughter's life because he was constantly moving between missions and home responsibilities. He begins making a greater effort to be present whenever he is not working. Dana does not know every detail about his profession, but she sees that her father is more attentive than before. Helen also becomes more supportive of Harry's career now that she understands what it involves. The family dynamic is not perfect, but the tension that once existed between them begins fading. The danger they survived has unexpectedly created an opportunity for them to become closer. At the same time, government officials remain concerned about the possibility of other terrorist threats. Aziz's operation demonstrated that a small organization could obtain extremely dangerous resources and bring them close to major population centers. Intelligence agencies began reviewing procedures and strengthening cooperation between departments. Harry is asked to provide recommendations based on what he learned during the investigation. He explains how Aziz used secrecy, false identities, and trusted intermediaries to remain hidden. He also emphasizes that personal connections can become vulnerabilities if agents assume their families are completely separate from their work. The lessons from the operation will influence future missions, particularly those involving terrorists who attempt to blend into ordinary society while preparing major attacks. The surviving members of Aziz's network begin facing prosecution as investigators assemble the evidence against them. Some cooperate in hopes of receiving lighter sentences, while others refuse to admit their involvement. The government carefully examines their statements because criminals often provide incomplete information when trying to protect themselves. Harry is occasionally called in to identify suspects or confirm details from the investigation. Each appearance reminds him of how dangerous the organization once seemed and how quickly its power disappeared after the authorities understood its structure. The process is slower than the action that brought the criminals down, but Harry recognizes its importance. Justice requires more than defeating enemies in the field. It also requires proving what they did and ensuring they cannot easily return to their former activities. Harry's professional reputation grows after the successful operation, but he remains more interested in maintaining his family life. His colleagues notice that he seems less distracted and more willing to talk about things outside work. Albert jokes about the change, but Harry knows they are serious. For years, his career had been the center of his identity, while his family received whatever time remained after missions were completed. Now he wants to find a better balance. He understands that his job will always require sacrifice, but he no longer wants Helen and Dana to feel as though they are strangers living alongside him. The truth has made him realize that family cannot simply be protected through distance. Helen also becomes more comfortable with the reality that Harry's profession will sometimes place him in danger. She does not enjoy the idea of him facing armed enemies, but she now understands why the work matters to him. Instead of imagining that he is wasting his life on an ordinary job, she recognizes that he is helping protect people from threats they may never know existed. Her respect for him grows because she has personally witnessed his determination during the terrorist crisis. At the same time, Harry understands that Helen has her own ambitions and interests. Their marriage becomes more balanced because neither expects the other to give up their identity simply to maintain their relationship. Philemon eventually becomes a distant memory as Helen realizes how little his false image had to offer compared with genuine trust. His attempts to appear mysterious had appealed to the part of her that wanted adventure, but the experience showed her that pretending to be someone else cannot create a lasting relationship. Harry's secret identity is different because it comes from real responsibility rather than an attempt to impress her. Helen now understands the difference between deception used for selfish reasons and secrecy required by dangerous work. She also recognizes that Harry's biggest mistake was not having a secret career, but failing to communicate enough about the emotional consequences of living with that secret. The city continues returning to normal as news of the prevented attack fades from public attention. Most people will never know how close they came to a catastrophe or how many agents worked behind the scenes to stop it. Harry is comfortable with that reality because his job has always depended upon remaining invisible. He does not need crowds to recognize him or newspapers to publish his name. What matters is that families continue going to work, children continue going to school, and people can enjoy ordinary life without knowing how much danger was prevented. Harry understands that a successful secret operation often leaves no visible evidence except the absence of the tragedy that might otherwise have occurred. The intelligence community continues monitoring the international connections that Aziz used, searching for anyone who might attempt to rebuild his network. Harry remains available for future assignments, but he now approaches his work with a stronger awareness of its personal consequences. He knows that enemies may eventually discover his identity or attempt to use his family as leverage. Instead of pretending that such risks do not exist, he plans for them more carefully. Helen's involvement in the recent crisis has taught him that complete separation is impossible. His family may never know every detail of his missions, but they can understand the basic reality of his work and the precautions necessary to keep everyone safe. One evening, Harry and Helen spent quiet time together without the pressure of an emergency waiting in the background. Their conversation is different from the arguments they had before the truth was revealed. Helen asks questions about Harry's work and he answers what he safely can. Harry asks about the things that made her unhappy during their years together, and this time he listens without becoming defensive. They both understand that rebuilding trust will take time. The terrorist crisis did not magically repair every problem in their marriage. Instead, it forced them to confront those problems honestly. Their relationship now has a chance because neither of them has to pretend that everything is fine when it is not. Harry begins accepting that being a secret agent does not require him to remain emotionally distant. His training taught him to control his reactions, hide information, and remain calm under pressure. But those skills do not always work inside a marriage. Helen does not need him to behave like an agent at home. She needs him to be present, attentive, and honest about the things that affect their family. Harry starts learning this difference. He remains disciplined in his professional life, but he becomes more open in his personal life. The change is subtle yet important. For the first time, he is learning how to live with both sides of his identity instead of allowing one to completely dominate the other. The success of the mission also strengthens the partnership between Harry and Albert. They have worked together through dangerous situations before, but the recent operation tested their ability to adapt under extreme pressure. Albert understands how important Helen has become to Harry and jokes that his partner now has another reason to stay alive during dangerous missions. Harry laughs at the comment but knows there is truth behind it. His family has become a stronger motivation rather than a distraction. He still wants to complete every assignment successfully, but now he also has a clearer reason for returning home. The danger has given greater meaning to the ordinary moments waiting for him after each mission. As the months pass, the events surrounding Aziz become part of Harry's professional history. New assignments replace the old investigation, and new threats require his attention. Yet, the lessons remain with him. He understands that criminals can hide behind ordinary identities, that families can become unexpected targets, and that trust is essential when danger reaches beyond the field. Helen continues building her own life while supporting Harry, and Dana grows more confident as she sees her parents working through their differences. The family is not suddenly perfect, but they are closer than before because the most damaging secrets have been exposed. Harry finally understands that truth can be frightening without necessarily being destructive. The final reports on Aziz's organization confirm that the terrorist network has been severely disrupted. Key members are imprisoned, resources have been recovered, and the connections that once allowed the group to operate quietly have been exposed. Intelligence officials remain cautious because international threats can change quickly, but the immediate danger has passed. Harry reads the report without the satisfaction he might once have felt after a successful mission. Instead, he thinks about how differently the entire situation could have ended. The operation could have destroyed countless lives and permanently damaged his family. He is grateful that the outcome was different and determined not to take future victories for granted. Harry and Helen eventually settle into a new routine that combines ordinary family life with the unusual demands of Harry's profession. There are still moments when Harry must leave unexpectedly or keep certain information private, but Helen no longer automatically assumes that his absence means he does not care. Harry also stops assuming that Helen needs to be protected from every difficult truth. Their communication becomes stronger because both understand the limits and responsibilities of his work. What began as a marriage filled with misunderstandings gradually becomes a partnership based on greater honesty. The danger they survived did not erase their problems, but it gave them the opportunity to face those problems together instead of continuing to hide behind appearances. Harry knows that another mission will eventually arrive, and when it does, he will once again become the highly trained operative who moves into dangerous situations while everyone else tries to escape. But when the mission ends, he will return to a home where his family knows who he really is. That difference matters more to him than he expected. He no longer needs to choose between being Harry Tasker, the agent, and Harry Tasker, the husband and father. Both identities are part of his life, and he has finally learned that one does not have to destroy the other. The truth has changed everything, but it has also given him something his old secret life could never provide. The final stage of the story begins with Harry settling back into his responsibilities after the defeat of Aziz and the destruction of his terrorist network. The immediate danger has disappeared, but the memories of the operation remain fresh in his mind. He knows that the mission could have ended very differently if his team had arrived even violating later. The nuclear threat has been secured. The surviving terrorists are facing justice, and the people who were placed in danger can finally return to their normal lives. Harry feels refer, but he also understands that his profession will never allow him to become completely comfortable. Somewhere beyond the quiet streets, another threat may already be developing. At home, Harry and Helen continue rebuilding their relationship after everything they have learned about each other. Their marriage is no longer based on the simple identities they once believed. Helen knows that Harry is a secret government agent, while Harry finally understands that Helen is capable of handling more than he ever expected. Their conversations become more honest, even when Harry cannot discuss specific details of his missions. Helen no longer interprets every absence as a sign that Harry does not care about her, and Harry no longer assumes that keeping her uninformed is always the best way to protect her. They begin discovering that trust can survive difficult truths when both people are willing to communicate. Dana also benefits from the changes happening inside the family. Harry begins spending more time with her and becomes more aware of the moments he previously missed because of his work. He cannot tell her every secret surrounding his profession, but he can be more present as a father. Helen notices the difference and feels that their family is finally becoming closer. The fear and confusion that once surrounded Harry's unexplained absences have been replaced by greater understanding. Dana may never know every dangerous detail of her father's career, but she can see that he cares about her and wants to be part of her life. For Harry, those ordinary moments become just as important as his greatest professional achievements. The government continues examining the remains of Aziz's organization, looking for any surviving contacts who could attempt to rebuild the network. Intelligence officers discover that some people connected to the terrorist had managed to remain hidden by using false identities and indirect communication. Harry is asked to assist with the investigation because his knowledge of the organization gives him an advantage. He studies the information carefully and helps investigators identify patterns that could reveal additional suspects. Although the main threat has been defeated, Harry refuses to assume that the danger is completely gone. His experience has taught him that criminals can remain patient for years before attempting another operation. Vigilance, therefore, remains necessary even during periods of apparent peace. Helen's own transformation becomes one of the most important consequences of the events she experienced. At the beginning of the story, she felt trapped inside a predictable life and believed excitement was something she had lost forever. Her encounter with Simon made her vulnerable to manipulation because she wanted to believe that his stories represented the adventure she was missing. After everything that happened, she understands that real excitement can carry consequences that cannot be controlled. More importantly, she realizes that she does not need someone else to make her life meaningful. She has developed confidence in herself and learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving forward despite it. Harry also reflects on the way he treated Helen before the truth was revealed. He had convinced himself that secrecy was necessary because his enemies could use information about his family against him. That concern was legitimate, but he had allowed the secret to create emotional distance. Helen felt ignored because she had no idea why Harry was constantly unavailable, while Harry became frustrated because she did not understand the sacrifices he was making. Now, both recognize that the problem was not simply the secret itself. The real problem was the assumption that they could protect their marriage without sharing enough of themselves. Their new relationship is built on the understanding that some information must remain classified, but feelings do not have to remain hidden. Harry's colleagues notice that he seems different after the mission. He is still disciplined, focused, and willing to take risks when necessary, but there is a greater sense of confidence in his personal life. Albert remains one of the few people who understands both sides of Harry's personality and jokes about how much his marriage has changed since the operation. Harry accepts the teasing because he knows his partner is right. The mission taught him that personal relationships cannot be treated like intelligence operations. People are not suspects to be monitored or problems to be solved. Helen needed Harry to trust her, and Harry needed to learn that trust cannot be created through control. The department eventually closes the major investigation into Aziz's organization after confirming that the central network has been dismantled. The evidence is transferred to prosecutors, surviving members face trial, and the recovered materials are placed under strict government security. Reports conclude that the planned attack could have caused enormous destruction if the terrorists had succeeded. Harry reads the final assessment quietly and thinks about how close the world came to a disaster that most people never knew was approaching. He is reminded once again why his work matters. Secret agents may not receive public recognition, but preventing a tragedy before anyone knows about it is often the greatest result they can achieve. Life slowly returns to normal for Harry and his family. They go out together, spend time at home, and begin creating memories that are not connected to fear or danger. Helen no longer looks at Harry as a boring husband who spends too much time away from home. She sees him as a complicated man whose life contains responsibilities she never understood. Harry, meanwhile, sees Helen differently as well. He recognizes her strength, independence, and ability to remain calm under pressure. Their marriage has become more equal because both now understand that they are capable of protecting and supporting each other. The crisis that once threatened to destroy their relationship has instead forced them to discover a stronger version of it. Harry's career, however, does not end with Aziz. The government still needs experienced agents capable of handling threats that ordinary officers cannot manage. New intelligence begins arriving about international criminals, arms dealers, and extremist groups operating in different parts of the world. Harry knows that another assignment could come at any moment. The difference is that he no longer sees returning to work as returning to a completely separate life. Helen understands what his job requires, and Harry knows that his family will be waiting for him. The balance may remain difficult, but the uncertainty that once existed between them has been replaced by a stronger sense of partnership. One evening, Harry and Helen talk about how strange their lives have become compared with the way they once imagined them. Helen remembers believing that Harry was simply a dull businessman, while Harry remembers how difficult it was to hide his true identity from the person he loved most. They laugh about some of the misunderstandings that once caused serious arguments. All two both know that the situation was dangerous at the time. Their ability to laugh now shows how far they have come. The past cannot be changed, but they can choose what they do with it. Instead of allowing old secrets to continue controlling them, they use the experience as a foundation for a more honest future. Harry understands that the greatest lesson from the entire experience was not about fighting terrorists or surviving dangerous missions. It was about understanding the people he had been trying to protect. He had always believed that strength meant controlling every situation and keeping danger away from his family. The events involving Aziz proved that complete control was impossible. What truly mattered was having people who trusted him enough to stand beside him when circumstances became difficult. Helen had shown unexpected courage while Harry had learned to abstract that she could share responsibilities rather than simply remain protected behind a wall of secrecy. That realization changes how you approaches both his work and his family. The remaining evidence from the terrorist operation is eventually archived, marking the official end of one of the most dangerous cases Harry has ever handled. The files contain records of surveillance, arrests, weapons, communications, and the plans that could have caused widespread destruction. For investigators, they become part of a permanent record. For Harry, they represent a period of his life when everything he believed about his marriage and his profession was challenged at the same time. He knows that another case will eventually replace this one, but he also knows that the lessons will remain. The mission taught him that even the strongest secrets can eventually become witnesses when they prevent people from trusting each other. Helen continues moving forward with greater confidence, no longer allowing the fear of danger to control her choices. She has learned that the world can be unpredictable, but she has also discovered that she is capable of handling difficult situations when necessary. Her relationship with Harry becomes more supportive because she now understands why he sometimes has to live without explaining everything. Harry, in turn, respects her ability to make decisions for herself. Their marriage no longer depends on one person protecting the other from every problem. Instead, they approach challenges as partners. The change is subtle but powerful, showing that surviving a crisis can sometimes create a stronger relationship than either person thought possible. Harry prepares for another assignment when new information reaches the department. The details are classified, but the situation appears to involve a potential threat that requires someone with his experience. He listens carefully as the mission is explained and begins preparing the equipment he will need. The familiar professional instincts return immediately. He becomes focused, alert, and ready to step into danger again. Yet, before leaving, he spends time with Helen and Dana. That simple act represents the biggest change in his life. In the past, he might have disappeared behind another excuse. Now his family understands that he has to go, and Harry knows exactly what he is returning home to. As Harry leaves for his next assignment, Helen watches him with a mixture of concern and confidence. She knows that work is dangerous, but she also knows the man she married far better than she did before. Harry turns back briefly, and the moment carries a meaning that would have been impossible earlier in their relationship. There is no need for elaborate explanations or false stories. They understand each other. Harry knows Helen will be safe and capable while he is away, and Helen knows that Harry will do everything possible to return. The trust they have built is stronger than the secrecy that once separated them. The story closes with Harry returning to the world of covert missions while his family continues their life at home. The danger surrounding Aziz has ended, but Harry knows that his profession will always bring new enemies and new challenges. He accepts that reality because protecting people is not simply a job to him. It is a responsibility he has chosen. What has changed is that he no longer carries that responsibility alone. Helen understands his world. Dana has a stronger connection with her father, and Harry finally understands the value of allowing his family to know the person behind the secret identity. His life remains unpredictable, but his home is no longer built on lies. Years of secrecy had once made Harry believe that keeping his family uninformed was the safest choice, but the events surrounding Aziz taught him that protection also requires trust. Helen's courage proved that she could stand beside him when danger became unavoidable, while Harry learned that honesty could strengthen rather than weaken their relationship. The terrorist threat has been defeated, the weapon has been secured, and the people responsible have been brought to justice. More importantly, Harry and Helen have found a way to move forward together. Their lives will never be completely ordinary, but they no longer need to pretend that they are. They can face the future knowing exactly who they are and what they mean to each other. And so, the story of Harry Tasker reaches its quiet conclusion after a journey filled with deception, danger, romance, and unexpected courage. What began as a seemingly ordinary marriage was transformed when Helen discovered the extraordinary life hidden behind Harry's ordinary appearance. Their world came close to destruction when Aziz attempted to unleash a devastating attack, but Harry's determination and the courage of those around him prevented disaster. The experience changed more than the outcome of a terrorist operation. It changed a family that had been drifting apart and gave them another chance to understand one another. Harry returns to his secret work, Helen moves forward with renewed confidence, and their future remains open to whatever adventure may come next.